The Fest for Beatles Fans returns to Rosemont August 12th through 14th, celebrating everything about the Fab Four. And one person who's going to be there is Chris O'Dell, who worked at Apple Records, was at the Beatles' iconic rooftop concert, and shared many legendary moments with the Beatles. Is set to appear. Thank you, Chris, for joining me today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, not only did you work at Apple Records, have these moments with the Beatles, but George Harrison even wrote a song about you, Miss Odell. I mean, not many people get a chance to say a Beatle wrote a song about them.
I'm not sure there are many. I'm not sure there's anyone else now that I think about it. I'm not really sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the Beatles documentary Get Back that was on Disney Plus. What was it like for you to rewatch those memories and to be able to see them in this series?
I was sorry about my dog, but my
Oh.
dog is always ever present. It was really strange because it was so beautifully done and it was so clear and everything that they did. It was like I was watching. Yes, it was like I was there. It took me right back there. I looked at it and I went, my gosh, this is like, I mean, it's kind of a home movie in a way. You see yourself at 21 or something. I mean, it was, it really got me. It really
Especially
got me.
now, the past 15, 20 years, everyone has a camera phone, so people are able to capture those moments. But back in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, we didn't have that. So we had to rely on people telling us stories or photographs we might have in a book. But to be able to relive those memories, I'm sure there's
Weird.
probably angles you didn't even see, or maybe moments you forgot about.
Um, you know, I don't know. I don't even remember. I don't know. That's the trouble. What was it, 50 some years, 50 years ago?
Yeah.
Imagine just having suddenly have your life back after 50 years. So but it was such a good time. Excuse me. And while they were recording at Apple, it was really, I mean, it was fun. They were there. We got to be involved and it was great.
You've talked about your son watching it and kind of those moments, and I'm sure growing up he heard the stories or asked questions. But what was it like for him to actually see the footage?
You know, uh, it's a good question. He's not a totally, he doesn't always talk exactly about all of his emotions, but I think it was very strange for him to see his mother at like the 20 some years old. He had walking, he's seen pictures, but to actually see her walking and moving, I think it was pretty amazing.
Let's talk a little bit. It was a chance meeting in the USA before you got a chance to go over to London. But talk a little bit about that moment and maybe what an average day at Apple Records was like for you.
Well, okay. Before going over there, I met Derek Taylor, who was the press agent for the Beatles and was going back because Apple was opening. So he was going back to work for them. And he and I met, we got along, and he invited me to come there. He didn't actually say, I've got a job for you, but he said, this would be a good time for you to appear. So it took some coaxing because back then we just didn't jump on planes and fly like that. So I sold everything and then I got there and um, you know, we were at Wigmore Street, so they weren't even at Savile Row yet. So it was a much smaller area. Everything was on one floor. And it was great. I mean, there were just people always there. There were always at least one Beatle there. And I mean, it was kind of watching, to me, I was a fan. So suddenly every day being able to see these people and they're becoming more and more real every day. I mean, they're actually becoming people instead of these sort of idols. So it was busy, it was buzzing. And then when we moved into Savile Row, it got even more so. It was every day was like an event.
Oh, I can only imagine. How do you process that? Especially obviously when you're going through it, you're a fan, you're 22 years old, and then as the years goes on and you step away from it, that you're like, I can't believe this was my life, or I can't believe this happened. I mean, do you have those pinch me moments constantly?
You just said it. I mean, it's interesting that you said that because that's really true. For one thing, I left it and I lived a different life. I was a therapist and raising my son and lived back in Tucson. So it was such a different life, but now it's kind of coming back again. I think Get Back really stirred up a lot of interest in the Beatles again. And now I sit around and I go, that was really a very interesting experience you had, Miss Odell. You were pretty damn lucky.
To be able to have that experience. You just mentioned
Absolutely.
Get Back. There's a part where you are typing out the lyrics to Get Back. You're on the backing track of Hey Jude. Do you have a favorite track or one that means the absolute most to you, or maybe a few? I don't want to obviously pick one, but if there's a couple that just have a strong emotional connection to you right now.
I don't know. I think they all do because they all have a memory. I mean, I came when the White Album it just started. They started recording it, so from that point on, every song, it all has a memory. So I don't know. I mean, I often say Across the Universe is one of my favorites, and I do love it. But I mean, there were so many wonderful songs at that time, and I loved something, and there were just so many that it's really hard to pick one out. It is really hard to pick one out.
Ringo and Paul McCartney still tour constantly. Do you go see them in tour every time they're in your city, or do you make a plan to go ahead and do that?
No, I don't. I've seen Ringo in concert, but it's been a while. And Paul, I saw maybe a tour or two ago. But I don't really like going to concerts. I saw a lot of them in my years in the music business, so it's kind of like, yeah, I don't get so excited about it.
I'm the exact in my younger days. I was like, especially like the all ages or the standing room only. You get there 5 hours before the show. You're the last one to leave. Now I'm like, is it on a weekend? Do I get a place to sit? Because this
Yeah,
is it's too much sometimes.
it changes. And can I please have a backstage pass?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, do you still get those?
Well, I was almost going to get one this week to see Queen, and then we found out it was a cover version. So, but well, when I do go, during COVID, there aren't many backstage passes for one thing, but yeah, I've gone back.
Let's talk a little bit about the rooftop concert because employees weren't allowed to go upstairs. So you kind of had it in your mind that you're like, I've seen, the scaffolding going up. I see the excitement for it happening, but you were not planning it to go up there. And it just happened to be that somebody needed an assistant. And that was your kind of golden ticket for that.
Yeah, exactly. We had a memo that went out that said no employees were allowed on the roof because it was not very strong. They were afraid it was going to fall in while the Beatles were playing on it. They'd even put up a fake roof over the a fake floor over the roof, and and the head cameraman came around on his way up because my office was on the top floor, and he said, "Are you coming up?" And I went, we're not allowed up." And he said, "Well, I don't have a reason to be there." And he said, "Yes, you do. You're going to be my assistant." So he took me up, and I went, "Woo! I hope no one notices." And there was this long bench right by the chimney, and he just sat me down in the one closest to his camera. And then it turned out that then Ken Mansfield from Capitol Records came up, sat down, and then Maureen Starkey arrived, Ringo's wife, and she sat down, and then Yoko came. So we were the four people with seats.
That is, I also saw, the ratio wasn't that, as fair as far as how many men were up there versus, the wives and you and like, a few other people. So it's like, I'm glad that you had your chance to be up there during that show.
Exactly, me too. Little did I know we'd be talking about it now.
So when you found out that, obviously, that was the last time the Beatles had performed all together, the band broke up shortly thereafter, but you were living with George Harrison at the time, and it wasn't a phone call or it wasn't a gathering. You found out through the paper that the band was essentially over.
Yeah, I was living at Fire Park, and I got up in the morning, and Patty said, "Oh my God, you don't know what's happened." She was in the kitchen, and the newspapers were spread across the dining room, long dining room table. And George was out in the garden because that was where he went for things like that. He loved it. And it was just a shock. It's hard to believe that there hadn't been some indication, but maybe he kind of knew, but hadn't seen the newspaper article yet. So it was a pretty strange day. And then John Lennon came over. And I say often, it's the only time I ever saw him without Yoko during that period of time. People ask me what I thought that day, and I have to say, I was so busy looking over the side of the roof trying to see how people were reacting because to me, the great thing is that, oh my gosh, the whole of London's going to get to hear the Beatles play, which they couldn't, obviously, but that was more my focus than them.
You had mentioned that every day was more exciting than the last, especially when you moved into the new office. But was there any part where you always had those pinch me moments, but that it felt like a regular office job, or was it just such extraordinary circumstances that it was just every day was more, as far as maybe like getting lunch or driving to the airport or some of those day-to-day tasks, did it ever feel like I'm just at a regular office job, or did it always have this like spirit of magic over it?
Uh-huh, it did. I mean, obviously it became the normal.
Yeah.
So going in Apple and being there all day and all the kinds of different things that were happening just became normal. So, but that was a different normal. That normal would mean if it was a dull day, it's because nothing really exciting was happening. Nobody was getting arrested. There were not people coming by and visiting. There wasn't a new album coming out. I mean, but most of the time there was always something going on.
Something going on. And then final thing here, as far as maybe a message for other 21, 22-year-olds, because sometimes people get scared of taking an opportunity or taking a leap of faith. And obviously, if you had said no to this opportunity to go to London at that point, your life would become very different. So like maybe a message for someone who's that age who might be a little bit afraid of maybe taking a chance or following their dream, or maybe doing an opportunity that they may not have thought might have been possible.
Well, obviously, I would say go for it. If something comes up and you want it and it looks crazy, go for it. It took me a while to decide, but the times have changed too. So I understand that. But, I always say the best thing I did was I said yes.
The best thing you did that. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. The Fest for Beatles Fans returns to Rosemont August 12th through 14th. Thefest.com is where you can go ahead and get all those tickets. And all the information on all the panels and all the guests that are going to be there. And you haven't been here since 2009, so we're excited to have you back in the Chicagoland area.
And Peter Asher's going to be there, and I worked for him. So even more fun.
More fun. You guys get to reconnect in Chicago. Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rudy.
Thank you.